What's going on, Giant fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I want to preview free agency for Big Blue and talk about the new assets that can come onto the 2024 roster, players that are UFAs, external, internal, you name it. I'm excited to break it all down. I hope you are here with me to enjoy the ride. First and foremost, if you like what you watch, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Big Blue Avenue on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. All three of those platforms work. Appreciate all the support throughout the course of the years and look forward to continuing to grow. So this should be an awesome start. And the biggest stories around free agency, of course, are two internal free agents that might be on the outside looking in for the New York Giants heading into 2024. And it starts with 7-year veteran Saquon Barkley, a guy who the Giants drafted in 2018, a guy I hold dear close to my heart. But I'll be honest, folks, it's time to move on. He's done a lot here with Big Blue. Unfortunately, since his third season, he's been a little injury prone. Really his second season when he had the hyperextension, but 6 years as a Giant last year, playing on that franchise tag, really spoke volumes to the person that he is on top of the player. And I love Saquon Barkley. He's a team captain. He's been one for a long time, but he didn't hit 1,000 yards rushing last year. He's 27 years old now. He's still very, very good. In my personal opinion, I'm biased. I think he's a top 5 back in the league when healthy, but you could see that his long run burst is starting to slow down a little bit. His acceleration is great. But at 27, I say he has about 3 good years left in him, and I would like to see him go to a team that desperately needs a running back, a team that is willing to pay him the money that he deserves. I just don't want it to be my team because the Giants are in a position right now where we need to allocate resources towards other positions, folks. A running back is not a position that you should be signing long-term for a large chunk of money in 2024. It is just not possible anymore. But I'm going to miss Saquon Barkley, the consummate team player and a true professional. I think he gets somewhere around the $13-14 million range. But, I want to thank Saquon Barkley for everything he's done as a Giant the past 6 seasons. And who knows, maybe the Giants surprise us. Maybe they sign him. But he'll definitely be missed. And it'll be interesting to see what happens there. We know the team also released Mark Lewinsky. I did a video on that already, saved about $5.7 million. But the other internal free agent I'm excited to find out what happens is Xavier McKinney. He mentioned on the Kay Adams show earlier this week that he is hopeful that he remains a New York Giant, but he's not sure what's going to happen. And a lot, I think, rides on the fact that the Giants got a new defensive coordinator, Shane Bowen, coming over from the Tennessee Titans, a defense that is very different from Wink Martindale. But Joe Schoen mentioned in a press conference that he hasn't signed players and drafted players that are only scheme specific. He wants guys to have a diverse background as far as skill set goes. And I think McKinney does have that. He's just 24 years old, but the safety market right now is not looking too great. They did not elect the franchise tag McKinney or use the transition tag, which I think was a smart move to not use the transition tag because the Giants would lose any draft pick compensation for McKinney or Barkley, even if they were to do that. So I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen. We know Wink Martindale left abruptly for Michigan, that drama with Coach Dable, but McKinney is a huge asset to this team. He's a captain. He played every single snap for the Giants in 2023. And if you look at a trend for the safeties, and this is what gets very interesting to me, right? Giants fans are saying, a lot of safeties are getting released. That's part of the safety unit now. But if you look, all of them are around 30 years old. A few of them are older. We know Jordan Poyer is 33. Justin Simmons is around 30 now, like 29 or 30. McKinney's only 24. I guess Joe Schoen just didn't want to use the franchise tag this year. There are a lot of more pressing needs on this roster. I would like McKinney to stay. Right now, I'm 50-50 with it. If it's up to Joe Schoen and Brian Dable, I think they're going to let Shane Bowen pick what safeties he wants in his scheme. And if it's not Xavier McKinney, I wish him the best. Second-round draft pick in 2020. One of the best players on the defense throughout his time here. Made that game-clinching tackle as well in that playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings in 2022 on T.J. Hawkinson. Other rumors, will Isaiah Simmons come back? We don't know. We know Russell Wilson came over for a cup of coffee in New Jersey on his way to meeting with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think Russ is coming here. A lot of people are saying, oh, he could be a good backup and some competition. I think he'll cost too much money. And at this point, I'd rather them get a cheaper vet like a guy like a Gardner Minshew, or possibly even explore the option of bringing back Tyrod Taylor at a cheaper cost if he does elect to do that, which I don't think is likely. I think a guy more like Gardner Minshew or Sam Darnold would make sense. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens at that position. I expect the Giants to add there in free agency. Before I get into the potential external free agents that I think will join the team, I want to quickly say here, through the first 2 seasons as GM for the Giants, Joe Schoen has made it a point to compete for today and build for tomorrow. And through free agency so far, through his first 2 years, it's been very average, I will say. The first year he didn't have much salary cap to deal with, so you can't really fault him for anything there. He was put in a very tough position. His hands were tied. His biggest free agent signing was Mark Lewinsky, who unfortunately got released by the Giants this offseason for cap savings. He did not live up to the hype. Lewinsky was, I'd say, an above-average run blocker, but a liability in pass protection. Paris Campbell this past offseason was a huge bust. The one stud that Joe Schoen did pick up for a bargain type of deal is Bobby Okereke, 4-year, $40 million contract. So, Joe Schoen has had some bright moments in free agency. I'm excited to see what he has to do. Jihad Ward was a nice depth piece he added as well. And speaking of depth, the Giants are set to meet with cornerback Darius Williams on Sunday. Starter for the Jaguars this past season. He'd likely be a starter here on the Giants as well as CB2 next to Deonte Banks. We know Adoree Jackson and Darnay Holmes are outgoing free agents. Adoree just finished his 3-year deal here. Darnay Holmes' rookie contract is done. Don't expect him to come back. He lasted through Patrick Graham and Wink Martindale. I don't think he's sticking around with Big Blue for a third defensive coordinator in 5 years. But Darius Williams was cut by the Jaguars for cap reasons. This past season, he was very good. He had 4 picks, 2 forced fumbles, and 19 passes defended. He's pretty good in press man coverage. He can drop back into zone. He's capable of doing both. He started all 17 games last year. And one stat that really stood out to me is that he only allowed 55% of passes thrown his way to be caught. And another factor, too, is durability. His last 3 seasons, he's played at least 1,000 or more snaps. The Jacksonville native played his last 2 seasons with the Jaguars, had 53 tackles in each of those seasons. And this is a phenomenal story for an undrafted free agent back in 2018 out of UAB. He's bounced around the league a little bit. He was claimed by the Ravens, then played for the Rams, won a Super Bowl with them, and then played the last 2 seasons with the Jaguars. Now, his size, well, he's 30 years old. He's only 5'9", he's 187 pounds. Adoree wasn't much bigger, guys. He was 5'10", 5'11". I know he was listed as 6 foot, but he was not that tall. So I have no problem with this, especially with Deonte Banks being in that 6'1", 6'2" range. You expect Cordell Flott to be the slot corner in 2024. I expect Darius Williams, if he is signed, to start opposite Deonte Banks. I don't think the Giants want a second-year rookie starting next to a rookie itself. Now, remember, Trey Hawkins is still on the roster as well. So I'm thinking next year, right? Darius Williams, Deonte Banks, your starters. By the way, I do think he signs come Monday. I do think once the tampering period opens, I know the league year hasn't officially begun yet, I think Williams will be a Giant. That's my prediction. But that's the only rumored free agent visit as of now. Let's get into the external candidates that I think could join Big Blue in the coming days. So we all know heading into free agency that offensive line is a huge hole. That's my number 1 priority. Now, my second priority is the edge rusher position. I'm excited to talk about players of both of those position groups. First up, Germaine Lemaire, offensive tackle coming from the Las Vegas Raiders, played with new Giants offensive line coach Carmen Brasillo. He's 29 years old, 6'4", 330 pounds, a New Jersey native. He has 45 career starts, and we all know The biggest issue on the Giants' offensive line last year was the revolving door at right tackle. And it started with Evan Neal, who was atrocious early on in the year. He got blown up by several different opponents. Granted, the first few games the Giants played this year was a gauntlet as far as edge rushers were concerned. But Neal unfortunately got hurt, had a concussion, another ankle issue, unable to recover. He was replaced by Tyre Phillips, who unfortunately suffered a season-ending injury himself. Lemaire brings a versatile skill set. He started 14 games this past season for the Raiders, primarily at right tackle, played in all 17 games. 2022, he started all 17 games at right tackle. This is a guy who was a fifth-round pick back in 2017, so he's been in the league for a long time. If Evan Neal struggles in 2024, you bench him for this guy, Germaine Lemaire. I do think he will compete with Neal for the starting job at right tackle, but right now Joe Schoen has made it a focal point to state that in year 3, Evan Neal is still our starting right tackle. But I do think the least he could do is bring in some competition for Evan Neal, the guy who struggled the most out of the Giants starters last season on the O-line. That includes Mark Lewinsky, who's recently departed. He spent some time with the Patriots as well from 2019 to 2020, and then he spent the last 3 years with the Raiders. This past season, he played 87% of the offensive snaps. That's 905 total, 0 holding penalties, 6 sacks allowed. That's not too great, but that's not too horrendous either. Only 2 career holding penalties as a whole, and this was a Raiders offensive line group last year that ranked in the top 10 to 12 units. 36th ranked offensive tackle on Pro Football Focus. I think this is a guarantee that the Giants bring in Germaine Lemaire. Matt Pert just finished his rookie contract. He's not coming back. He was a bust. Evan Neal needs competition. It starts with Germaine Lemaire. Next up, the big free agent signing that I think the Giants make is Jonah Jackson at guard. Played on a playoff team this year with the Detroit Lions. He's 27 years old, a third-round pick back in 2020 who made the Pro Bowl in just his second year in the league in 2021. He started 57 career games. That's every game he's ever played in. He's only allowed 2 sacks. Last season, that was 14 hurries and 27 pressures. That's just under 800 total snaps for him on offense. He only played in 12 games last year, but he is pretty durable. He's missed 9 games over 4 seasons, which isn't perfect, but it's a lot less than the Giants starters have missed. I think Andrew Thomas missed almost 9 games this season. I think the total was 7, but I'm exaggerating. Very efficient line for the Lions, though. A lot different from the Giants. He played left guard in between Taylor Decker and Frank Ragnow, 2 former All-Pros. So this is a guy that could mold into the Giants system with Brasillo. I think he would be automatic starter. We know Ben Bredesen played some left guard last season, as well as Justin Pugh. Pugh and Bredesen are both free agents. I do think there's a shot that Bredesen comes back on a short-term deal, but Jonah Jackson is a clear upgrade. I like him a lot. Next up is John Runyon from the Green Bay Packers. I won't spend much time on him. We know his father got abused by Michael Strahan back in the day for the Philadelphia Eagles. But Runyon Jr. is 26, 6th-round pick in 2020, 50 career starts through 4 seasons and 67 games played. He started all 17 games at guard for the Packers in each of the last 2 seasons. That line improved throughout. For a day 3 draft pick, he's been a solid player. He's more of a Bredesen to me. He's more better at run blocking. Another guy from Brasillo's line in Vegas is Greg Van Roten. 34, older player. I think you bring him as a possible swing guard or an interior piece that can play a little bit backup center for you as well. He played 1 season under Brasillo. He also previously spent a year with the Buffalo Bills, 71 career starts. And this past season, folks, he started all 17 games for the first time in his career. He had 0 penalties last season, allowed 5 sacks. Next up is a guy that I think is second most likely to be a Giant behind Jonah Jackson. It is Dalton Risner from the Minnesota Vikings. I'm excited to talk about this guy because he was a draft pick back in 2019 by the Denver Broncos, 2nd-round guy. He spent 3 years there, got traded to the Vikings. named starting left guard as a rookie out in Denver. He suffered a partial UCL tear last January. He's 28 years old now. Started 11 games last year, gave up 0 sacks on 745 offensive snaps. He started all 16 games his first 2 seasons, 15 games the 2 years after that. So he's a 5-year pro entering year 6, only 2 holding penalties his entire career. He is pretty good at pass blocking. He has good footwork. So I'm excited to see if the Giants elect to bring him in. Next up, we have Robert Hunt from the Miami Dolphins. This is another guy who helped protect Tua this past season. He's more or so on an offensive line that has struggled in the past. Hunt is 27. He's 6'6". He's a big boy. Second-round pick 4 years ago. He started 55 games. He's played 100 snaps each of the last 2 seasons. Only allowed 1 sack this past year, but only played in 11 games with 10 starts. He is somewhat of an injury-prone player. I think the Giants stay away from him for that reason, but he is an option if teams are outbidding the Giants for guards. Next up, I do think the Giants have to add someone to the quarterback room. Gardner Minshew is a valiant option, I think. He's 27. He's much younger than Tyrod Taylor. He was a Pro Bowler this past season. The Colts almost made the playoffs with him starting at quarterback for majority of the season. He's bounced around. He played 3 years with the Jags, 2 years with the Jags, 2 with the Eagles, and 1 with the Colts. Same draft class as Daniel Jones. He could provide some competition for a quarterback who's coming off another neck injury and an ACL tear. We don't know what Daniel Jones is going to look like in 2024. The Giants are not in a position to draft one of the top 3 quarterbacks at this time in this year's class, so the Giants might as well sign a free agent to compete with Daniel Jones rather than draft one. Minshew this past season was 7-6, threw for over 3,000 yards. 15-22 career record as a starter, but his numbers are pretty similar to Tyrod Taylor's. So I'm intrigued to see how this works out and how this goes down, who the Giants might sign. Now, if the Giants elect to move on from Saquon Barkley, I don't think Eric Gray is capable of being a running back too. I didn't see enough last season. Matt Breida is also a UFA. So what do I think the Giants do? I think they sign a cheap veteran and they draft a running back. Devin Singletary is a great option. He knows Brian Daboll's scheme. He's worked with Shea Tierney before. He knows Joe Shane. He was a draft pick of the Bills back in 2019 in the 3rd round, played at FAU, 26 years old. He's 5'7", 203. He's a one-cut runner. He's not very flashy. But last year for the Houston Texans, guess what? He had under 900 rushing yards, just under, with 4 scores. I mean, he almost had as many rushing yards as Saquon Barkley, and he was not the full-time starter until the middle of the season. Next up, I don't think this next move is likely, but if the Giants do elect to go wide receiver, Gabe Davis is an option. Again, familiarity with Brian Daboll. Started all 17 games for the Bills in 2023, played as their wide receiver 2 opposite Stephon Diggs. He scored at least 6+ touchdowns in each of the first 4 seasons. I think the Giants are missing, that consistent big play threat. They're trying to develop Hyatt into that. We saw shades of it last season. They do have Darius Slayton on the roster, which is why I don't think this move is likely. The fact that Slayton played well last year secures his roster spot for 2024. The average depth of target, though, for Gabe Davis is around 15 yards, so it is very appetizing to talk about this guy, and he is just 24 years old. Next up, if the Giants go to the edge room, Denico Autry is an option. I know he's more of an inside defensive lineman, but he can kick out to the edge, and I wanted to talk about him here. Older player at 33 years old, but he's bounced around the league. A UDFA in 2014. He's played for 3 different teams now. 59 career sacks, and in his 3 years with the Titans playing under Shane Bowen, he had 8+ sacks in each of those 3 seasons. Something to note. He led Tennessee with 11.5 sacks last season to add with 17 QB hits. Bryce Huff from the Jets is a guy that needs to be talked about. 17.5 sacks through 4 years, 10 of them coming last year. He really blossomed this past season. Quinnen Williams occupies multiple defenders, which allows Jets edge rushers to clash in, whether it's Jermaine Johnson II or Bryce Huff. I do think the Jets did have a really good defense this past season, and Aziz Ojolari, he needs competition. The Giants have no depth behind Kayvon Thibodeau at the edge position. O'Shane Ximenez was a failed experiment. Ellerson Smith, another failed experiment. Aziz Ojulari, very injury prone. And with Bryce Huff, only 7 career starts, yes, but he is a rotational piece. I expect the Giants to add to this position in free agency and the draft. He played in all 17 games for the Jets last season. To go with those 10 sacks, he had 21 QB hits. Something to keep in mind, the 24th ranked edge rusher out of 111 qualifiers. Danielle Hunter is another guy from the Minnesota Vikings. This is the most expensive option, in my opinion. He's 29 now. He's been in the league for 8 years with the Vikings, a 4-time Pro Bowler. If the Giants want to get rich at this position, Hunter's the guy. 16 and a half sacks. He led the NFL with 23 tackles for loss, 22 QB hits, and 4 forced fumbles. You need to get edge rushers, and Andre Patterson, the Giants' defensive line coach, has a tie to Danielle Hunter. DJ Wanum's another option too, but if the Giants want to get rich, Danielle Hunter is the guy at the edge rusher position for the Minnesota Vikings. 5 seasons of double-digit sacks. Linebacker. So we know Cam Brown and Carter Coughlin are not coming back. We know the starters are Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden. Well, we need to see what Shane Bowen's defense is going to look like in 2024. And I think 2 options for the Giants at linebacker are, first, Terell Dodson, UFA from the Buffalo Bills, and a UDFA back in 2019. 25 years old, played 5 seasons, 143 tackles last season for the Bills to go with 4.5 sacks. Look, those are his career numbers, not last season. Last season, he was forced to start 10 games, had 74 tackles there with 2.5 sacks, 6 QB hits. The Bills had a lot of injury problems at linebacker last season with Matt Milano. They lost Tremaine Edmonds in free agency, so there were a lot of holes there. Terell Dodson, he's not great in pass coverage. He allowed over 240 yards after the catch this past season, but had a career-high 51% of defensive snaps. His PFF grades are a little inflated, in my opinion, but he was number 1 of linebackers in PFF and in run defense. He is a guy who can be a solid third linebacker option next to the aforementioned Okereke and McFadden. One other option at linebacker here is Aziz Al Shiah. I'm interested to see if the Giants do give him a look. He played with Shane Bowen, played under Shane Bowen with the Titans. He's 26, played 3 years with the Niners, this past season with Tennessee. This past season with Tennessee alone, 17 games, 163 tackles, 9 TFLs, 6 QB hits, 2 sacks, 4 passes defended. He could do it all. He improved in pass coverage and really flourished this past season under Shane Bowen. And that goes a long way because, he played with the 49ers, right? He was okay there. He couldn't get to the level of a Fred Warner or a Dre Greenlaw, but he is a nice option if the Giants look to give Micah McFadden some competition. Lastly, if the Giants don't bring McKinney back, I think Kevin Byard is the guy they go to at safety. Much older, 30 years old, traded to the Eagles last season from Tennessee. Previously signed a 2-year, $25 million deal. The Eagles saved roughly $13 million by cutting him, salary cap casualty. So I'm looking at this player and I'm saying, well, he's probably going to make at least $12 million per year. But here's what he can bring. And this is likely less than McKinney, but he's a box safety, he's a free safety, and he's a slot safety. Career coverage rating of 80.5, 29 picks, 31 passes defended, 2-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time Pro Bowler. He gets interceptions. This past season, he had just 1, but he played 99% of the snaps for the Titans, 100% of the snaps for the Eagles. Iron Man, like McKinney. Year before that, had 4 picks. 2021, had 5 picks. He had a career-high 8 picks in 2017. What am I getting at, folks? He's a turnover machine. He can play in the box. He can help out Flott in the slot, and he can help in the boundary as well. Byard is a guy that I do think might have a chance of being a New York football giant in the coming weeks. So those are my predictions for free agency. Who are the most likely guys to sign with Big Blue? I think Germaine Lemaire is a given. I think Jonah Jackson is likely. I definitely think Devin Singletary could be an option. Kevin Byard could be an option, although I hope it is McKinney. for our sake, folks. And I think a quarterback. Is a likely addition as well. So I'm excited to watch it all go down come Monday and later on next week. But before we go, folks, friendly neighborhood reminder to please check us out at all of our social media platforms on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Big Blue Avenue. Appreciate all of your support. And without further ado, folks, let's go Big